Story 1. Room 9 and the Curtain That Breathed. The motel office gave me one rule with my key. Don't open the curtains after midnight. I laughed because the window faced a parking lot and an empty highway. At 12:07 a.m., the curtain moved anyway, like something on the other side exhaled against the glass. I pulled off the road because exhaustion makes decisions for you long before you admit you're not safe to drive. The motel appeared as a low strip of light in the darkness, a line of doors and buzzing neon that promised a bed, a shower, and the simple comfort of shutting the world out for a few hours. Inside the office, the air smelled like dust warmed by a space heater and something citrusy trying too hard to hide it. The clerk was an older man with a face that looked permanently tired, but his eyes were sharp in a way that made me feel examined, like he could tell how far I'd driven and how long I'd been awake. "Just one night," I said, sliding my card across the counter. He didn't ask for a plate number. He didn't ask for a second ID. He just wrote something down on a clipboard, handed me a key fob, and said, "Room 9. I glanced at the brass tag. 9, I repeated. His gaze lingered on me for a beat, and then he added, like an afterthought he didn't want to say out loud, "If you wake up and hear the curtain move, don't open it." I tried to smile, to make it normal. "Is it windy out there?" "There's no wind tonight," he said, and his voice stayed flat, like he was reciting a line he'd learned from experience. "And if you hear scratching at the door, don't answer it either." I should have left then. I know that now. But fatigue makes you grateful for any roof, and gratitude makes you careless. I took the key and walked back outside. Room 9 was near the end of the row, under a flickering light that buzzed like a trapped insect. The parking lot was mostly empty, just my car and a couple of old trucks that looked like they hadn't moved in days. The highway beyond was a dark ribbon with occasional headlights sliding past like distant eyes. Inside the room, everything smelled aggressively clean, but the kind of clean that comes from too much bleach and not enough fresh air. The bedspread was patterned to hide stains. The curtains were thick and beige, fully closed, and I noticed the bottom hem didn't quite touch the floor, leaving a narrow black gap like a mouth not fully shut. I ate a granola bar, took a quick shower, and told myself I'd be asleep in minutes. I woke later to silence so complete it felt artificial. My phone said 12:06 a.m. I lay still, listening. The motel's usual sounds weren't there. No distant TV, no passing footsteps, no cars. Even the highway seemed quiet, as if the night had swallowed it. Then I heard it. A soft, rasping sound, like fabric sliding across fabric. The curtain moved, not fluttering like wind, not a random shift from air conditioning. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if someone were dragging a fingertip down the folds from the outside, testing the weight of it. My heart thudded hard enough that I felt it in my throat. I stared at the curtain, at the narrow gap at the bottom. The fabric bowed outward slightly, like it was being pressed from the other side. The clerk's warning replayed in my head with nauseating clarity. Don't open it. I stayed still, holding my breath. The curtain stopped moving. For a few seconds, the room was silent again, and my body tried to convince me it had been a dream. Then a sound came from the window that shattered that illusion. A slow, wet exhale against glass, close and heavy, as if something had leaned its face to the pane and breathed out. The curtain bulged outward, then relaxed, like lungs. I sat up, unable to help it. The bed creaked under me. The moment it did, the curtain moved again, faster this time, like it had heard me and was pleased. The gap at the bottom widened slightly, the fabric lifting just enough for darkness to spill under it. In that darkness, something shifted. Not a shape I could identify, not a clear limb or head, but a density, moving the way an animal moves when it's trying to stay low and hidden. The air under the curtain shimmered like heat distortion, only colder. I forced myself to look away, to focus on the door, to remind my brain there were exits and locks and logical steps. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. No signal. The screen brightness dimmed as if the phone itself wanted to sleep. The curtain moved again, and I heard a faint clicking sound, like nails tapping glass, searching for an edge. Then, softly, a voice came from the window. Not a person's voice, not a clear sentence, more like sound shaped into something that resembled speech, the way wind sometimes sounds like it's whispering your name. And it did. It sounded like my name. I froze, every nerve screaming not to respond. The tapping stopped. A new sound came, closer, lower. Scratching. Not on the window now, on my door. 3 slow scrapes, as if something sharp was being dragged down the wood. I stared at the deadbolt, suddenly aware of how thin the door was, how motel doors are designed for convenience, not protection. The scratching came again, and the door handle twitched once, lightly, like a test. I grabbed the chair from the tiny table and wedged it under the handle, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The chair legs skidded on the carpet, and the noise seemed to trigger something outside because the scratching stopped abruptly. For a moment, there was nothing. Then the motel room phone, the cheap plastic one on the nightstand, rang once. I hadn't noticed it before because I never used those phones. The ring was harsh in the silence. I stared at it, paralyzed, because nobody calls motel room phones at midnight unless it's the front desk or a prank. It rang again. I didn't move. On the third ring, the phone stopped, and the receiver lifted by itself a fraction, just enough to make the speaker click alive. Static hissed. Then the clerk's voice came through, low and urgent. "Don't move," he said. "Don't look outside." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" I whispered, barely able to make sound. He didn't answer directly. He just said, "It likes faces. It learns them." My throat tightened. "Why me?" "You opened the door," he said simply, and there was something in his tone like apology. The static swelled, and beneath it, I heard a sound that didn't belong on a phone line. A wet clicking, like a mouth working. The receiver trembled slightly, vibrating on the cradle. The clerk's voice returned, strained. "If it knocks, don't answer. If it calls your name, don't answer. If it makes your voice, don't answer." My blood turned cold. My voice. As if on cue, from the other side of my door, I heard myself speak in a calm tone. "Hey," my voice said, perfectly normal, perfectly friendly. "Open up, I forgot my key." My skin prickled so hard it hurt. The chair under the handle shuddered once, as if something leaned against the door from the outside. The curtain moved again behind me, louder now, as if it were impatient that I wasn't watching it. I stayed still, eyes fixed on the floor between bed and door, refusing the urge to check the peephole, refusing the urge to prove what my mind already knew. Minutes passed in a slow blur of breathing and distant scraping. At some point the sound stopped. The room fell quiet again, but the quiet felt staged, like a trap. I didn't sleep. I waited for sunrise the way you wait for a verdict. When the sky finally brightened and the highway noise returned, I packed without looking at the window. I kept the curtains closed and moved fast, as if speed could erase what had happened. At the office, the clerk was already waiting outside,
cigarette trembling between his fingers.
He looked more exhausted than he had the night before. "You're leaving," he said, not a question. I nodded. He held out my receipt and my card, and his hand shook slightly when I took them. "It didn't get in," he said, and there was relief in his voice that sounded personal. "Why room 9?" I asked, unable to stop myself. He stared past me at the row of doors. "Because it always chooses 9, he said softly. "Because 9 is the last room with a window facing the highway." I swallowed. "What's out there?" His eyes flicked toward the road. "Something that doesn't want you to leave," he said. "And something inside that tries to help by giving it a room." I drove away in daylight, telling myself it was over. But that night, when I checked into a different motel miles away, the clerk handed me a key and said, "You're in room 9. Story 2. The Ice Machine at the End of the Hall. The note on the motel TV remote said, in neat handwriting, "Do not use the ice machine after 1 a.m. At 1:02, my cup was empty, my throat was dry, and I told myself a handwritten note couldn't control my night. When I pressed the ice lever, the machine didn't drop cubes. It dropped a single black hair, wet and warm, onto my palm. I checked into the motel because the snow started earlier than forecast, and the road turned into a glossy ribbon of danger. The place looked like every roadside stop you've ever seen. 2 floors, exterior hallways, a lobby that smelled like stale coffee and carpet cleaner, and a sign that promised vacancy like it was doing you a favor. The clerk was young and friendly, too bright for the late hour, and the lobby Christmas lights blinked even though it was January. I took my key and my room number, climbed the stairs, and tried not to think about how empty the building felt for a place that was supposedly open. My room was on the 2nd floor, near the end of the exterior walkway. From my door, I could see a line of snow-covered cars and a dark stretch of road beyond. The wind was loud out there, but inside my room, it was strangely quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. I noticed the note on the remote almost immediately because it didn't match the motel's printed signage. It was handwritten on a torn piece of paper, taped to the plastic with clear tape that had been smoothed carefully, like someone wanted it to stay. "Do not use the ice machine after 1 a.m. No signature, no explanation. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it felt like a superstition trying too hard. I peeled the tape back, considered throwing the note away, then stopped. Something in me didn't want to anger whoever had left it, even if angering them should have been impossible. I left the note attached and went to sleep. I woke at 12:58 a.m. with a dry throat and that half-panicked sensation of being dehydrated. The heater was running too warm, and my mouth felt like paper. I sat up, reached for the cheap plastic cup by the sink, and filled it with lukewarm tap water. It tasted like chlorine and old pipes. I stared at the ice bucket sitting on the counter, empty and clean. The note on the remote flashed through my mind again, but thirst is persuasive. I told myself I'd be quick. I told myself it was 12:59. I told myself I wasn't a child who obeyed scraps of paper. The exterior hallway was colder than my room, and the wind pressed hard against the building. I walked toward the ice machine at the far end, my cup in one hand, room key in the other. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere below, a car alarm chirped once and went silent. The ice machine sat in an alcove under a harsh fluorescent light. Its front panel was scuffed, and the lever handle looked sticky with age.
A small trash can beside it held a single crumpled paper cup, as if someone else had tried and given up. My phone screen lit when I checked the time. 1:02 a.m. For a second, my skin prickled.
The number felt like a line crossed, a small step over a boundary. I hesitated, then pressed my cup into place and pulled the lever. Nothing fell. I tried again. The machine made a low groaning sound, like a tired animal. Then a single object dropped into my cup with a soft, wet tap. I looked down expecting the translucent shine of ice. Instead, there was a strand of black hair, long and slick, coiled at the bottom of the cup like something that had just been pulled from a drain. It wasn't my hair. It wasn't even my color. My stomach lurched. I jerked my hand back and nearly dropped the cup. The hair clung to the plastic as if it had suction. It looked too heavy to be dry. It glistened. I dumped the cup into the trash can. The hair slid out slowly, sticking for a moment before it fell with a wet slap. I backed away, heart pounding, and the hallway light above the alcove flickered, dimming, then brightening, like it had noticed my reaction. I turned to go back to my room, and that's when I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, near the stairwell, a door was open. Not a room door, a service door, one that should have been locked, with a sign that usually says, "Staff only." The opening was narrow, just enough for darkness to spill out like smoke. And from that darkness, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. The same groaning sound the ice machine had made, but deeper, more vocal, like a throat imitating a mechanical noise. I walked quickly, not running, because running would have made it too real, and I didn't want to make the building feel like it had the right to chase me. My keys shook in my hand as I unlocked my door. Inside, the room smelled warmer than before, but it also smelled faintly damp, like a towel left too long in a bag. I locked the deadbolt and leaned my back against the door. Then the motel room phone rang. One ring, then silence. I stared at the phone. I hadn't given anyone my room number. No one should have been calling. The desk wouldn't call at this hour unless there was an emergency. The phone rang again. This time I picked it up without thinking, because sometimes fear makes you grab the nearest explanation like a lifeline. "Hello?" I said. Static hissed. Then a voice came through, low and close, as if whispering into a microphone. It sounded like a woman, but the cadence was wrong. Too slow, too careful, like speech being assembled rather than spoken. "You used it," the voice said. My throat tightened. "Who is this?" "You used it after one," the voice repeated, as if that was the only sentence it owned. "I didn't," I began, then stopped because denial felt childish in the face of that certainty. The voice breathed once, and the breath sounded wet. "Now it knows your room," it said. The line went dead. I stood there with the receiver pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone, shaking. Then, from outside in the hallway, I heard the ice machine lever click. Once, twice, 3 times, slow and deliberate, as if someone were testing it, as if someone were practicing the motion that would make the machine give them what they wanted. I backed away from the door, eyes fixed on the peephole. I didn't look through it. Something in me refused to give the hallway the satisfaction of being acknowledged. The lever clicked again, and this time the sound was followed by a soft, dragging noise, like something being pulled across the concrete floor of the walkway. Then the dragging stopped outside my door. A gentle knock followed, polite, quiet and patient. 1, 2, a pause. 1, 2. I held my breath. Then a voice came from the hallway, so close it might as well have been inside the room. It was my voice. "Hey," it said calmly. "Open up. I got the ice." I didn't move. The knock came again. 1, 2, and beneath it, I heard a faint, wet scraping like hair being dragged across the door's surface. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the bed with the lamp on, watching the deadbolt like it was the only barrier between me and something that had learned a rule and wanted to enforce the consequence. In the morning, I checked out early. The clerk smiled and asked, "How was your stay?" I stared at him, trying to decide if he was part of it or just another person trapped in a building that had its own habits. "I saw a note about the ice machine," I said carefully. "After 1. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Oh," he said softly. "Yeah, people leave notes." "Why?" I asked. He swallowed. "Because sometimes the machine gives you what you ask for," he said. "And sometimes it gives you what's been waiting." Story 3. The vacancy sign that didn't mean vacancy. The neon vacancy sign was on, blinking steady in the fog, like a promise. The clerk never asked for my name, never asked for payment, and never looked up from the ledger when he slid the key across the counter. The key tag read, "No checkout." I found the motel on a stretch of road that didn't have any other lights for miles. Fog rolled thick across the asphalt, and my headlights felt weak inside it. I hadn't planned to stop there, but the wrong turns had piled up, and my confidence had been replaced by the dull certainty that I needed a room before I made a mistake I couldn't walk back. The motel sign was old neon, the kind that hums and clicks and makes the air feel faintly charged. Vacancy blinked in red. The office light was on. A bell sat on the counter. I stepped inside and the warmth hit me like a soft wall. The room smelled of paper, old coffee, and something faintly sweet beneath it, like perfume trapped in carpet. The clerk sat behind the counter with a ledger open in front of him. He was thin and pale, hair combed neatly, posture straight, as if he'd been waiting for someone to arrive at the exact right time. He didn't greet me. I cleared my throat. "I need a room for the night." He turned a page in the ledger, slow and careful. "You're late," he said quietly. I frowned. "Late for what?" He didn't answer. He reached under the counter and slid a key across to me without looking up. I picked it up and saw the tag. No checkout. I laughed once, uncertain. "Is this a joke?" The clerk finally looked at me. His eyes were gray and flat in a way that made me feel like he wasn't looking at my face so much as through it. "If you check in," he said, "you stay until you're done." My throat tightened. "I'm just tired. I'll pay." He raised a hand slightly, stopping me with a gesture that felt practiced. "No payment," he said. "Not like that." I should have walked out, but outside was fog and darkness and a road that had already proven it could mislead me. The lobby was warm, lit, contained. It felt safer, and that feeling was the trap. "What room?" I asked, because asking was easier than leaving. He looked down at the ledger again. 12, he said. He didn't hand me a receipt. He didn't ask my name.
He didn't even ask how long I planned to stay. He turned another page and wrote something with a pen that scratched too loudly in the quiet. As I walked out, I glanced back and saw that the ledger's left page was filled with names in neat handwriting. The right page was blank, except for one line. My name. I stopped, cold, flooding my chest. How did you? The clerk didn't look up. Everyone signs, he said softly. Eventually. Room 12 was on the far end of the second floor. The hallway was open air with a railing that looked out into fog so thick it felt like staring into a wall. The lights along the walkway were dim, and one of them flickered with a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat you could see. My door opened with the key easily. Too easily. Like it had been unlocked already. Inside, the room was clean in a way that didn't feel lived in. No personal touches, no stains, no smell of other people.
It felt staged, like it had been reset to empty without ever being occupied. I sat on the bed, shoes still on, and listened. The building was quiet, but not empty. I could hear faint movement inside the walls, like pipes settling, like tiny claws scratching behind drywall. I told myself it was rodents and old plumbing. I told myself a lot. I tried the TV. It turned on to a single channel showing black and white footage of the motel lobby from an overhead camera angle. The clerk sat at the counter, still writing in his ledger. No sound, just the image. I turned the TV off and stood, suddenly needing air. I pulled the curtain aside to look at the parking lot. There were no cars. No highway lights, no passing headlights. No road at all. Beyond the railing was only fog, dense and absolute, swallowing the world as if the motel floated in nothing. My skin prickled. I let the curtain fall back. When I checked my phone, it had no signal, but it did have a time. 2:12 a.m. The numbers didn't move. The time stayed pinned to 2:12 like the night had been nailed in place. A soft sound came from the bathroom. Drip, drip, drip. I walked toward the bathroom door, listening. The faucet wasn't on. The shower wasn't running. The drip continued, steady and patient. Then the bathroom mirror fogged from the center outward, a slow bloom of condensation that shouldn't have been possible in a dry, cool room. As the mirror fogged, words appeared in the clearing space where someone's finger had written, revealing the glass beneath. Stay. My throat tightened. I stepped back and the fog thickened, erasing the word, then cleared again as if the mirror wanted to repeat itself. Stay. I turned away from it, heart hammering, and in the room behind me the motel phone rang once. I stared at it, then picked it up because my body was running on the need for explanation. The line was dead for a second. Then the clerk's voice came through, close and calm. Are you comfortable? He asked. My mouth went dry. Where am I? I whispered. At the motel, he said, as if I'd asked something silly. You checked in. I want to leave, I said. A pause, then softly. Not yet, he replied. You haven't finished. Finished what? I asked, and my voice cracked slightly. He breathed out slowly, and the sound on the line was like paper sliding over bone. The road brought you, he said. Now you pay the road back. The phone clicked dead. Outside my door in the hallway, footsteps began. Not heavy footsteps, not hurried, but a slow pacing back and forth like someone counting rooms. The steps stopped at my door. A gentle knock followed. 1, 2. Then a voice, low and intimate, spoke through the wood. It was my voice. "Open up," it said. "Checkout time." I backed away, shaking, staring at the deadbolt. I hadn't thrown it yet. I rushed forward and turned it, locking it in place. The metal clicked loudly in the quiet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door handle turned once, twice. The deadbolt held. A soft scratching sound followed, not at the handle, but along the edge of the door frame like nails finding the seam. The motel room TV turned on by itself. The lobby camera feed was back. Only now the clerk was standing, staring up at the camera lens as if he could see me through it. He raised his hand slowly and pointed, not at the screen, but toward something off camera, toward the hallway, toward my room. Then the feed changed. It showed room 12's door from a camera angle outside, high and tilted downward, as if the motel had always been watching that door. I saw my own room door on screen. I saw the handle turning. I saw myself inside, a pale shape reflected faintly in the room's window, standing too far back. And behind the door, in the hallway, I saw the thing that was knocking. It was low to the ground, longer than a human body should be, with limbs bent at angles that made no sense for walking. Its head tilted toward the door like an animal listening for movement. But its face was wrong, too smooth, as if features were optional. It lifted one hand and knocked again. 1, 2. Then it pressed its face to the crack under the door, and the shadow of it spilled into the room like smoke. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My body had gone cold and stiff, like the motel had turned fear into paralysis. The TV speaker crackled, and the clerk's voice came through, softer now, almost sympathetic. "Don't give it your voice," he said. "That's how it learns the rest." I swallowed hard and forced myself to breathe through my nose. Quiet, shallow. The creature outside shifted, and I heard its joints click like wet wood. It sniffed, and the sound was too human, too familiar, like someone trying to imitate breathing. Then, from the other side of the door, it whispered my name perfectly. The deadbolt shuddered once, not from force, but as if something on the other side had touched it and tested its shape. I stayed silent until my eyes burned with the effort of not making sound. Minutes passed. The thing outside paced away, then returned, then paced again, like it was bored but not defeated. At some point the phone's digital clock blinked and changed. 2:13 a.m. Time moved. The footsteps outside stopped. The hallway fell silent. I didn't trust it. I didn't sleep. I waited until dawn, watching the thin line of light grow under my curtains like a lifeline. When the sky finally brightened, I opened my door. The hallway was empty. The fog outside had thinned. The parking lot was there again, and so was my car, exactly where I'd parked it. I ran down to the office, keys in hand, desperate to leave, desperate to see the clerk and demand answers. The office was empty. The ledger sat open on the counter. On the page with my name, there was a new line beneath it, written in the same neat handwriting. Checked out. And on the key tag in my hand, the words, "No checkout," had been scratched away so deeply the plastic was gouged, as if someone had removed them with a blade. I left without looking back. But I still think about what the clerk said, because it felt less like a warning and more like an explanation of how the world works in places like that. Some motels don't rent rooms. They rent you.